And the photo she cropped too carefully. I noticed it because I do lighting for a living. You see 1,000 faces under 1,000 bulbs and you learn what shadows are trying to hide. The photo was from a cafe near the river, posted to Lena's story at 10:11 a.m., a casual square of latte art in her hand in the corner holding a spoon. Nothing suspicious, except the light. The reflection in the spoon was wrong, too warm for the cafe's overhead LEDs, and in the blurred chrome of the espresso machine I caught a taller shape leaning toward her. A jawline like a ruler, a shoulder I didn't own. The caption said, "Quick break," and the world slid an inch to the left. I told myself it was a coworker. Our lives are full of other people's shapes. But an hour later a second photo appeared, an abstract of a red scarf on a chair. In the mirror behind the chair, a suit jacket ghosted past the edge before vanishing. The message said, "Back to it." I stared at my phone until the screen dimmed. I'm the guy who fixes a spotlight when it buzzes. I'm a list maker, a cable coiler, the man who knows where the gaffer tape ended up. I'm not a detective. Yet by noon I'd scrolled back through a month of Lena's photographs and found 3 more places where the world had left fingerprints. The corner of a shoe reflected in a window, the second coffee cup cropped out of a hotel lobby shot, a shadow crossing her collarbone that had the patience of a practiced hand. If you do this to yourself long enough, your breath learns new shapes. At 1, the client rehearsal broke for lunch. The stage manager flicked work lights on and the actors scattered. I stayed in the rigging like a man who preferred altitude to oxygen, then climbed down muttering something about a cable run. On the loading dock I called my friend Theo, who has been the emergency exit to every burning room in my life. "Breathe," he said after I explained the spoon, the mirror, the red scarf. Theo is the kind of friend who will bring a cake to your divorce if you ask him to. Don't invent. Verify. "How?" I said, adding the way my voice made the word weak. "Ask her where she is," he said. "See if the version you get fits the light." I texted Lena, "How's your day? You look beautiful." I didn't ask about the cafe. I asked whether she'd be home for dinner. 3 dots appeared and then her reply landed like a folded napkin. "Long day. Late meeting near the river. Don't wait." The river, the scarf. The second cup that didn't exist. I could have gone to her studio and waited like a scene. Instead, I did the unromantic thing. I opened the photo on my laptop and zoomed into the spoon. A clean, modern cafe. The corner of a framed print with a tiny plaque. I knew that print. The cafe was Cadden, at the edge of the art district, the place Lena liked when she wanted to be seen by people who pretended not to see. I put my jacket on and told the stage manager I was picking up a cable clamp. Cadden at 3 p.m. is a curated hush. People who love their laptops more than themselves. The barista recognized me and didn't ask why, a kindness I wanted to pay for. I sat where Lena's reflection had been and looked around. The framed print was by an artist we'd argued about. She thought the series was sentimental. I defended its composition. Listening became easier in the chair she'd used, as if upholstery could keep confessions warm. He came in at 3:12, right on the kind of time that belongs to money and confidence. The jawline was as righteous as it had been in Chrome. He had that grip on a room that good-looking men don't know they're performing. He didn't see me. He saw himself. He ordered something that required a name longer than the cup, then sat near the window where Lena's scarf had been. I thought of all the ways men ruin their lives in public and chose none of them. I texted Lena, "Want me to meet you after?" She replied, "Don't. It's tedious and I'll be late." The thing about lies is not that they're convincing or even elegant. It's that they require the liar to hope you won't love them enough to notice. I decided to love her with my eyes open. At 5, Cadden started wiping down handles like they were erasing the day. He stood and straightened his jacket and walked toward the river. I followed at a distance, a man out for air. I've lit 100 gala stages in that neighborhood. I know the rhythm of its doors. He turned into a building that used to be a textile warehouse and is now a colony for creative people who can pay for exposed brick. He didn't buzz. He had a key. My stomach learned about gravity. I didn't go in. I'm not built for breaking and entering. I waited across the street and watched lights blaze on in a second-floor window the color of good whiskey. A shadow crossed. 2. I could make their heights out, the precise, practiced distance people keep when they've learned how to close it quickly. If you want to torture yourself, stare at a lit window and imagine the skin beneath silhouettes. If you want to survive, look down after 10 seconds and memorize the cracks in the sidewalk instead. At 7:20, I texted again. Want me to bring food later? I'll grab something, she said. Don't wait up. The phrase felt like it had been translated from another language in which it means lie down and imagine me. I walked. I walked until the river put its cold hand on my neck. I stood on a bridge where the rail smelled like old rain and watched a tram's halos braid across the water. I had never hated a city before. It didn't deserve it. When I got home, Lena's shoes were not by the door. Her coat hook was empty. The apartment had the calm of a set before the actors arrive. I made pasta because boiling water is a task that forgives a shaking hand. Thea called to make sure I hadn't done anything cinematic. I told him I had done something worse. I had done nothing. Sometimes the dignified thing is survival, he said. She came home at 10:50 with her hair loosely tied like a truce, and the scent of someone else's hallway caught in her scarf. She kissed me with the softness people bring to dangerous rooms. Long day, she said. How's the river? I said, and her posture changed by the width of a shadow. Cold, she said. Everything okay here? I could have shown her the spoon, the mirror, the rectangle of lit window. Instead, I placed a fork beside her plate like a gentleman in a scene and asked if she wanted parmesan. We ate like athletes after a wrong race. In bed, she reached for me. Desire isn't a moral quality, it's a fact. I wanted her the way people want oxygen underwater. We moved carefully, with attention, the way you do when you're stepping across rafters in the dark. She pressed her mouth to my throat and made that sound like a question answered. If this were a confession, I'd say I was doing it to win. I was. I was reminding myself of the part of our story that still had a pulse. In the morning, I woke before her and watched light make promises on the ceiling. My phone buzzed with a client email and beneath it, a message from an unknown number. I don't want to be the villain. She's not asking for me to be. Names that come as initials are a genre of cowardice. I deleted it and then didn't empty the trash, which is its own kind of hope. When Lena left for the studio, she wore the red scarf. I touched the fringe and she touched my wrist with a tenderness that hurt. Dinner tonight, she asked. I'll cook. Make the lentils, I said, like we were doing an impression of us. At noon, a messenger arrived at the theater with a padded envelope. Inside was a photograph. Lena's cafe picture printed on matte paper cropped wider than her story had been. In the expanded frame, his hand hovered over her cup, not touching it but owning the air above it. On the back, a note in clean script. You don't have to be an audience. The arrogance of a man who believes he's being helpful. I didn't show Theo. I didn't show anyone. I put the photo in the lighting desk and spent the afternoon dialing cues, 5% warmer than usual, so the play would feel kinder. At 6, I went home to the smell of garlic and cumin. Lena had rolled up her sleeves and leaned above the stove like a scientist. For a second, everything was what it had been, two people with a rhythm. She turned, wiped her hands, and kissed me with the certainty of someone who had decided to try out honesty and was taking the first step by mouth. "I was going to tell you," she said softly. "Then tell me now," I said. She looked at the lentils, then at me. "There's a man," she said, and her voice didn't break. "Julian. He runs a small gallery. He asked about a part of me I forgot to maintain. I tried to shut the door. My hand got caught." "Are you in love?" I asked, because words should have edges. "I'm an escape," she said. "It sometimes pretends to be love." We stood there, the pot daring us to ignore it. She turned off the stove and we leaned against the counter like a negotiation table. "Did he send you a letter?" she asked suddenly, because she knows my face better than her own. I didn't lie. I showed her the photo. She swore under her breath and pinched the bridge of her nose. "He thinks he's kind," she said. "It's his worst feature." "What do you want?" I asked. "I want us," she said. "But I can't get there by pretending I didn't walk out of the house." "Then walk back through the front door," I said. "I'll be here if you choose it. I won't stand on the porch." She came to me and set her forehead against mine, and we breathed the old breath. It's amazing how much a body remembers when a mind is new to a room. We ate on the sofa while the city breathed around us. We didn't talk about Julian again. We talked about the play, about whether the dog downstairs is secretly 3 separate small dogs in a trench coat, about whether paint has a smell you can miss during a fight. After dishes, she took my hand and brought me to the bedroom. It wasn't theatrics. It was a field report. We kissed slowly, the way people catalog artifacts. Her skin warmed under my palm, and I felt the truth of us that had nothing to do with anyone else. She unbuttoned my shirt with the competence of a woman reading a book she has loved and forgotten the best parts of. When we moved together, it wasn't to erase a picture. It was to draw a new one on top of it with lines that refused to be tidy. We didn't pretend we were new. We were specific. She said my name like a permission. I said hers like an answer. After we lay without the shield of conversation, the ceiling returned to being only a ceiling. She traced the line where my collarbone makes decisions. "We can try," she said into the quiet, "but I won't promise an outcome, only a method." "Honesty," I said. "Honesty that arrives before the act, not after," she said. "Honesty that can be ugly without turning cruel." We made rules and we broke one by sleeping too close when we'd promised space. The next morning, she wrote an email to Julian that I watched her type and didn't read. She slid the red scarf into a drawer. "For later," she said, and I didn't ask what later meant. I wrote back to the unknown number. "She's choosing. Don't help." There was no reply. A week passed in which nothing dramatic happened and everything did. There were small apologies like tiles in a mosaic. Her leaving her phone face up on the counter, me not counting the buzzes. Her telling me when she was running late and why, me believing. We went to a movie and held hands like teenagers who knew more than teenagers should. We stood at our window and watched another couple argue in a kitchen across the street, the back and forth of their gestures more eloquent than dialogue. We didn't narrate it. We just stood there until their light went out, and we kissed our reflections. On the 8th day, a package arrived addressed to me. Inside, a framed print, the cafe mirror shot, this time cropped to Lena's hand and the foam and the hint of another cup. No men, no ghosts, just the scene as she might have wanted it to be. A note was taped to the back. "Light is a choice." I stared at it, then set it face down on the table. Lena came home and saw the frame and understood. She took a breath that lifted her whole chest and held it for a second like a priest with a wafer. Then she flipped the print over, tore the note, and slid the photo out. With a marker, she drew a thin line around the edge of the spoon where my face would be if the angle had been kinder. She handed it to me. "You're here," she said, "even when the world edits." We hung it in the hallway by the door, not as a threat or a trophy, but as a lesson in composition. The day after, I lit the gala at Julian's gallery. I'd been booked months before and I kept the job because abandoning rooms doesn't make them empty. He wore his certainty like cologne. He didn't speak to me. I dialed the spots half a stop cooler than usual and watched him squint under the rig he didn't know I controlled. It felt like Justice's gentler cousin. When I got home late, Lena was awake, sitting on the floor of our bedroom with the red scarf in her lap. "I kept it out by accident," she said, "but I don't think I'll wear it soon." I slid down beside her and we let the scarf's fringe tickle our knuckles. We talked about dull things, rent paint the way the window sticks in the morning. We built a tiny island and stood on it. She leaned into me and the edge was there again, heat shaped by care. We let it in. We let it touch everything without burning it down. I don't know if this is the chapter where we save ourselves or the one where we learn how to leave without salt. I know I can read light better than before. I know she looks at me like a person who can open doors without knocking them off their hinges. I know there are still moments when the city puts its palm over my mouth and asks me whether bravery and stupidity share a border. And I know that in the silver of a spoon, if you tilt it, you can see two faces where earlier there had been one. That's enough some days. That's the entire story others. We're learning which is which.